Well, Berkeley was part of my intro for you, so I guess we'll go for the intro.
Intro card, commence.
We're here in the car shop. This is the Jason Damico show, and I'm here with my good friend Ryan Masecar. And yeah, man, I mean, drumming for Maj Deeka right now. You know, recording a bunch of artists in the area. We're in the kind of the Raleigh Triangle area of North Carolina over here.
This is the eastern corner of the triangle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And music production connoisseur, drummer extraordinaire, you know. Beginning stages for you. Let's go back even before Berkeley. Like, how did this start for you, man?
Like in music, I guess, would be the first start, right?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like most drummers are born to a certain degree. You know, some people are just born to hit things, and I was one of those kids who would pull out the pots and pans. You know,
I can relate.
Like all 30 pots and pans, going from like tiny little ramekins to, you know, big old aluminum mixing dishes, and I'd whack them with the wooden spoons in the kitchen. And that turned into drumming on the dinner table, and in order to sort of quell some of my young energy, my mom, when I was 7 years old, gave me an ultimatum that I was either going to take karate or I was going to take piano lessons. So I think we were already in the cul-de-sac for the piano teacher, which was like in our neighborhood in Holly Springs, which is about 15 minutes that way. So I ended up taking piano lessons. Surprise. And I took piano lessons for 5 years until I was about 12. At which point I had already picked up guitar and drums and stuff. I started playing drums in 6th grade. Because, you know, you go to middle school, and as part of the orientation open house thing, they show you all the electives. And, you know, woodshop's cool and all, but I feel like you can learn how to chop wood pretty much anywhere. I decided to pick up the drums as my... Actually, no, that's not true. I originally decided to play saxophone in 6th grade. But at Westlake Middle School, we had two band directors. We had Mrs. Betts, who was the woodwinds teacher, and then we had Mr. Atkinson, who taught the brass and the percussion. And I went to the first class with Mrs. Betts, and I didn't like her very much. And I found out that I would have to start on clarinet, not on saxophone. So I was like, you know, fuck this. I'm out. I'm going to go play drums.
Right.
And started playing the glockenspiel and a practice pad. And I got a snare drum for Christmas or something. No, it wasn't quite Christmas. I think my mom just came home with a snare drum one day. Like, here you go. Now you have a real drum. And I still have that drum. It's in my living room right now. It's a different color now. And I got a drum set that Christmas when I was 12. And I guess the rest has been a very expensive 17 and a half years or so since then. I picked up guitar the year after that. And, you know, that's expensive too. But it allows me to kind of at least, you know, fart around with some chords. If I have an idea, if I focus on it, I can lay it down on whatever instrument I have at hand, and that's a nice thing.
As far as from a multi-instrumental standpoint, were you writing earlier on? Or was it more of a practicing?
I still don't write enough now. I've always been more of a player than a writer. I think maybe I read a little bit too much Neil Peart at too young of an age. And
rest in peace. I mean, still trying to get over that.
I'm March 11th, you know, I'm doing that show. We'll see when this comes out. But he was a big influence on me, and reading his book and just kind of getting inside the man's head a little bit with his writing kind of made me a little bit scared to ply the inner, more personal parts of the self, I think, to a certain point. So I just never really got into the habit of it. But I mean, I've always had little riffs here and there, and lately I've just been so busy with, you know, working and doing records for other people that, it usually gets down as a snippet and then I forget about it.
Right.
But, sort of like what I was saying with teaching lessons, I'm just trying to get back into practicing and trying to get my feet to work, trying to do some heel toe. It's kind of working. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, well...
I just kind of grill it with the...
I weigh like 150 pounds tops, so I have to kind of think of clever ways to do these things.
Well, it's funny was when we were at the Poorhouse seeing you guys a few weeks back. Incredible show.
Thanks, man.
Really enjoyed it. And you came out, I think you had like 2 layers of long sleeves on.
No, I always wear a t-shirt under a long sleeve shirt.
A t-shirt and a long sleeve shirt.
Yeah.
Playing drums at the Poorhouse with lights, at least 100, 150 people there.
Yeah.
And I was sweating just holding a camera with this on, a short sleeve.
Well, you have to like hold your arms up holding the camera.
Well, dude, I mean, you're playing drums, man, and from drummer to drummer, it's like, I came up to you, I was like, dude, how do you do this? How are you doing this and not breaking a sweat? And for you, it's just...
I mean, the trick is really to just immobilize anything above the elbow and then just kind of swivel. So all of my kit is reachable from down here, so I don't have to go above my head for anything. And then it's all just like little finger techniques and tuning the drums high enough that they bounce. I'm not one of those guys that tunes his toms really, really low. I guess I listened to too much jazz in middle school or something.
Right.
And I started tuning my drums that way. I mean, Neil tuned his drums really, really high. I don't tune nearly that high.
Yeah. Him and Stuart Copeland are the ones that come to mind that were very high-tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I mean, Tony Williams, too, and of course all those bebop jazz guys,
right.
Max Roach and...
Buddy and...
Yeah. And, you kind of try these things, and I think I realized that I like the feel of the drums tuned higher, better.
What's your go-to kind of drum sound for you? Because a lot of... I mean, we could talk about this for 24 hours, but...
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I should have asked this question.
Well, I mean, it's none of the cameras are pointed at it, but it's that kit there, the Yamaha Birch Absolutes, which I've probably played almost every kind of drum set that you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And I like drums that respond quickly and with a full tone. Well, I mean, everybody does, right? It's like I like a car that drives quickly and also gets great gas mileage. It's like, yeah. Of course you do. But these Birch drums, they're the recording custom shells, but they have less hardware on the shells, so they're a little more open. And I run them with ambassadors. I guess I've listened to a little too much Simon Phillips, too. I've got clear ambassadors on the tops and the bottoms, so they're just wide open, and they're huge, and they're fat, and they're you have to play them right. I record with these drums with other people playing them, too. And,
that's got to be interesting.
Yeah, and I have some Gretches as well, which are darker and fatter and swampier. But, I mean, I have a tendency to play a lot of fast notes, and the Gretches don't always keep up with that unless you do something totally different.
Are you saying from like a transient standpoint, just articulating and hearing that clearly?
Yeah, there's kind of, well, with most drums, there's a compromise between the transient clarity and the development of the fundamental note.
The boom.
Yeah.
Right.
So, like, if you play some DWs or something, you hit a floor tom and it kind of goes, wah, right? It kind of blooms into the sound. With these Yamahas, the tone is there immediately. And just boom,
Right.
And that's what I look for is, whatever drum I'm hitting, I want the full sound as soon as I hit it, because then it'll keep up with me,
Right.
no matter how
Right.
fast I'm playing. And that's something that ambassadors do really well, because they're thin single-ply heads.
Right.
So they just respond quicker because there's less mass.
I've been recording with ebony pinstripes.
Hey, man, if that's the sound that you want.
The funny thing is that, I mean, they're a bitch to, I'm not doing double rolls on them or anything, but for those little single rolls, man, they're They're fat.
Oh yeah, man. That's kind of I have. Well, the Gretches have Emperors, but I have you haven't seen this kit. 2 summers ago, I was up in Pennsylvania and found this kit in West Virginia. It's a 24, 14, 16, 18. And I have coated Emperors on it.
Okay.
And it's a little bit lower than John Bonham, but it kind of it kind of channels that spirit.
John Bonham actually tuned semi-high.
Really high.
Yeah.
He just had huge drums.
It was huge drums.
Yeah.
And room mics and just...
Well, C12s and an RE20, at least that's what Jeff Ochiltree had in his video.
Right.
So you've got like $30,000 worth of two microphones. It's like, does that sound good? Yeah, it's gonna sound
saturated to
through whatever console they were using,
and the tape and the pre's,
like the Trident console. I think.
Oh God, beautiful.
Yeah, what a great drum sound.
Well, let's talk about influences then, real quick. So obviously Neil.
Yeah.
John, I'm assuming to a
yeah,
certain
definitely
degree,
John Bonham. I mean, my snare sound comes a lot from John Bonham. You become exposed to certain material at a certain age, and it kind of becomes part of you.
Mm-hmm.
The Song Remains the Same was kind of a watershed moment like that. I went to a rock and roll camp for 2 years in high school down in Atlanta called Camp Jam, which was, what was his name? Jeff Carlisi? It was the guitar player from 38 Special.
Okay.
Started it. I might have his name totally wrong, but I met a bunch of people down there, and they would just, kind of sit you down like, here, watch some rock and roll videos. And that was one of them. And I always just loved that wide open, supraphonic sound. It kind of honks in your face like a goose. I love it. It kind of goes home, and it's got tone.
It's kind of that's how it was with me with Alex Van Halen.
Yeah,
that snare was just like.
Well, Van Halen is playing a supraphonic too,
right.
And his is just kind of like John Bonham's sound, but a little darker, a little more muffled. And I guess probably it could be a little more articulate, although he had a tendency to play more of a constant velocity drum thing, Alex Van Halen.
It's funny because I noticed, and this will open up the can of worms to audio engineering and production and all that, but you said something that I do want to hit a key point on is like, read the credits for the younger guys, read the credits on records, because you'll notice when I was checking out Alex Van Halen and Bonham and a lot of these guys, they were using some of the same gear, and the supersonic, Paiste or Paiste, however everybody pronounces it.
It's Paiste.
Yeah. I've been saying Paiste for years. Yeah,
it's an Estonian name.
Yeah,
we have a German guy at 2112, so he knows how to pronounce the German things, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, with Stuart Copeland, it was the same thing. It was like, I just heard John Bonham, Stuart Copeland, Alex Van Halen, and those are some of the big guys for me. And it was always like that sound.
Yeah,
and I noticed that Paiste was. I mean, you can hear that difference, and I love all the cymbal companies, but you can hear the differences in each one for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I primarily play Paistes. I think on the kit right now, it's all Paiste, except I have a Zildjian Ride as a crash, and I think it's either a bottom hi-hat cymbal on the bottom, like a 15-inch rock hi-hat bottom, or it's like a 15-inch field cymbal. On the bottom hi-hat, and then the top is actually a bottom 602.
Ah.
So it's kind of this Matt Cameron, super heavy, slow, but when it's closed, it's still really crisp and kind of brightish.
I love 15s as hats. Yeah. I've got some rude, Green Label series. I don't even know how old they are. I should probably check the serial number. Yeah. I'll send you a picture. Maybe we can hunt that down and figure out what it is.
Somebody will know.
Yeah.
There's fanatics for pretty much everything on the internet.
Well, then audio engineering.
Yeah.
Influences. I mean, if there's any other drummers that you want to expand on, but...
Well, I mean, I got to give Neil Peart, John Bonham. I got to give a shout out to Mike Portnoy. because I was a huge Dream Theater fan for a solid 10
Mike's
years.
tight, man.
And those drum parts are perfect for the song.
Tight as hell.
You know, you can say whatever you want about the music or about Mike Portnoy or whatever, but for the time, there's an appropriate thing, and that was it.
Yeah.
I loved his drum sound.
Yeah.
Live at Budokan is still one of my favorite sounding records of all time, just because everybody's playing really well, except maybe James LaBrie, who's kind of pitchy. But it's James LaBrie, we love him. But he's playing those Star Classic maples with the clear Emperors, and they're like muffled, but it's a Kevin Shirley mix too, which is a segue to the next thing.
Right, of course.
But those drums are huge, and they're fat, and they're kind of compressed, and they're super punchy.
Yeah.
And they just fit in a spot within the bass and the guitar and the keys that I've always loved. I guess, being a Dream Theater fan, that led me down the prog rock rabbit hole. The Spock's beard. So, I love Nick DiVirgilio. And
great player.
His sort of Phil Collins influenced, like, jazzy thing. Love that. And, of course, that leads to, like, going to the horse's mouth. You listen to a lot of Genesis and appreciate Phil Collins. Of course, when you go to Berkeley, they sort of, here's some jazz. Like, learn how to play it. So I started listening to Tony Williams, and that kind of, I wouldn't call myself like a connoisseur of Tony Williams just because I don't know, I barely listen to anything anymore that I should listen to. I'm usually working on my own stuff or somebody else's Pro Tools sessions. But I've always loved Tony Williams' phrasing and his ultra staccato sort of sound. Stanton Moore, who I saw a couple of clinics, I saw him do a couple of clinics back in high school, and his half swing New Orleans thing made a big impression on me.
Yeah, great player.
Once I saw that, I'm like, well, that's the funk.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you can't quite do that, then you're never going to be quite funky enough. So I spent a decent amount of time trying to get that half swing thing down.
Are you a fan of Chad Smith?
Yes. Although I can't say that I'm like a huge fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, just because I don't know if I was a snob or if my friends were snobs or something. But I never really listened to the Chili Peppers growing up, and I've been listening to a bit more of them lately.
Yeah.
And I've started to appreciate Frusciante's playing a little more. But I always found it kind of simplistic. And I never really liked his guitar sound, growing up at least. I've come around to sort of appreciating that super bright Strat bridge pickup thing, because it's unique and it works for the music, and you kind of have to take that at face value to a certain point. And Chad Smith's ghost notes are awesome. Oh. And how he bounces his left foot the whole time. That's kind of where I picked that up.
That's a sound.
Yeah, because it's like. It's not quite sloshy when you're playing the hi-hat, but it's not really tight either. It's just kind of like, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of Steve Smith in a way.
That's why I brought him up, was because just with some of the guys that you're rattling off, he encompassed that finesse, but with that guerrilla approach.
Right. It's like, it's the caveman.
Beats the shit out of them.
He and David Garibaldi are kind of like two sides of the same coin. David Garibaldi comes from more of the jazzy side of things, playing fairly light, and Chad Smith comes from the other side, where he's just beating the snot out of his snare drum. And I love that.
Blood Sugar changed my life when one of my friends played me that record in high school. I was like 14 or 15. Mm-hmm. And, come to find that Brendan O'Brien mixed and kind of like co-produced with Rick Rubin produced it. But
right. And they recorded it at his house, too.
Right.
Or outside of his house for a couple of them.
And, and then STP and all those drum sounds were Brendan O'Brien.
Yeah, he's one of those guys for me, too. Like Super
God.
Unknown and Dogman by King's X are two of my favorite sounding records of all time.
Yeah. And and going back to the point I made earlier, it's like reading the credits, because I noticed Brendan O'Brien, Brendan O'Brien, Bob Rock. Like, these are the two, for me, those are like the two big guys.
Yeah.
And then So it's just like, it's just interesting how that kind of progresses with your musical journey as a young person, and now with us kind of, really
finding our own way.
Trying to find our own way.
Who do we copy?
Well, it's weird because it just gets to that point where the hundreds of influences really start funneling.
Yeah.
If you stick with it long enough, it really is strange.
It's like a soup.
You do start to find yourself after the 10,000 hours.
Or however many hours it's been. I'm not keeping track, thank God.
Man.
Brendan O'Brien's definitely one of those guys for me. Because once I started looking at those credits, Dogman was a huge record for me.
Right.
Just because it's so simple and it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And that's recorded and mixed by Brendan in Southern Tracks in that beautiful room on that SSL, which you can hear it squeezing everything a little bit. I just love that sound. Who knows where the distortion's coming from, but it's definitely coming from somewhere. It's probably a combination of the channel strip and the mix buses and the tape machines. Now, if only I had $1 million, I'd have like 3 of those.
Mm-hmm. Someday, man.
We'll see.
Someday.
Hopefully. But Kevin Shirley's a big one for me, too, for the Rush in the Dream Theater.
Yeah. Great sounding records.
And, he kind of does the same thing. He's a guy with an SSL and a bunch of tape machines. And there's always a creamy quality to his mixes. And I don't really know what it is. I'm not sure if that's... Because I very highly doubt that Live at Budokan was recorded onto tape. That's probably, if anything, DAT machines. Just recorded onto, HT24s or something.
Maybe early Pro Tools on site.
Yeah, that was 2004.
They could have baked it on something later.
Yeah, he could have transferred it to 2-inch tape and then mixed off of that, do subgroups or something. I know Chris Lord-Alge does that. Who's another big influence of mine.
Yeah, same, man.
Just because, when you're in middle school and American Idiot comes out.
Great sounding record.
What a great sounding album.
God. And the songs and the arrangements.
Every song on that album was an anthem.
Yeah,
every single one.
Yeah.
And, how do you do that? How do you make every song stand alone and also together?
CLA is the only guy that I know that can saturate the living hell out of something and it works. Because, when you listen, and some of the, I think he did, I start grinning when I say Creed because everybody's got their mixed feelings, but he did a Creed record. And
I just did Creed at the Great Cover-Up, so you can, I have an appreciation for Creed.
I think, Scott singing the national anthem, that's a different story. I'll show you later, but I think he was just having a bad day. But no, man, I grew up listening to Creed and loved them for what it's worth. But one of those records, I think it was Full Circle or something. But you watch the RMS on that, and it's just there. There's not much dynamic happening.
7 dB of dynamic range tops. If that. Yeah.
But he just has that sound where he just saturates and it works.
Yeah. Well, he's doing it on the mix level, which works.
Yeah. Yes.
That's
exactly.
When did that album come out? I don't know the...
It's probably 10 years old. That was kind of during the Loudness War era when that was phasing out.
Yeah, because I know their first album came out in, 99 or something. We did some research for the Great Cover-Up. And, you listen to it, and it's all right, that's a Mesa rectifier and a Spectre bass.
57 or 421 picking it up.
Something like that. And a Black Beauty or a Bell Brass on the snare.
Yeah.
And, U87 for the vocals. Pretty standard rock stuff.
Right.
But, for the time, it's that's a really good snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of give a little bit of credit to Godsmack for that, too. People. Well, that's Drowning Pool. I don't know anything about.
Oh, that's right.
About Drowning
I'm
Pool.
getting my.
You're getting your butt rock references.
I'm getting my genre overload.
But similar thing. Mesa rectifier with a lot of top end, and Yamaha Birch Absolutes, and I kind of love that punchy sound from those records. I don't really have any interest in listening to it anymore, but I appreciate it for what it was at the time.
Yeah.
And their double Drummond thing was always cool, because
What always cracked me up was when it would show up sparingly. You'd have that little braka thing, that little thing. It's like, all right, cool. I mean, it just cracks me up, like how some guys would use it a lot. Some guys would just use it very, very sparingly. It's
yeah.
like,
Well, a lot of that also, I mean, it's interesting to sort of go back through the lineage of rock and roll history and figure out where that's all coming from. Just see how much every rock drummer has ripped off Cozy Powell. Because all of that, two hands,
quads,
2 feet thing,
yeah.
that's Cozy Powell.
Yeah.
And, because John Bonham took the 2 hands, 1 foot from Elvin Jones.
Trips, yeah.
Yeah, whatever you want to call that. I think, I don't know what sticking Elvin used, but Bonham went left-right kick, which I didn't realize until a couple years ago.
I remember Merritt told me that way, way, way back.
Yeah, I've been trying to work that into my licks.
Yeah, that's strange.
It's hard.
Yeah, Don Brewer from Grand Funk Railroad was a huge one to me that just took like the triplets to a whole other level, with some of his live solos.
Yeah, that's another band that I haven't listened to enough of, because every time
you would enjoy them.
Every time I see some live stuff pop up on YouTube as like a suggestion, it's awesome.
You would really enjoy the. I'll send you some stuff. Just the recording, very, very fuzzy.
Yeah.
In your face, like how did they get it this loud back then? Type of thing, like
turn up the game.
Man, it was just great. So, along the lines of that, let's just go with this. What would the 3 main ingredients be for you that make a record stand above all the rest and be able to? My whole thing is like, what makes you listen to something 1,000 times and then some and still find new things? Like what? How would you kind of?
That's a good question. I might have to think about that one for a second.
And that's fine.
The first ingredient is it has to just sound good.
Right.
And good is also relative.
Subjective.
Yeah, it's subjective, and it also depends on the source material, like what style of music you're making. Like, you can do different things on a punk record that you would not be able to get away with on a jazz record. If somebody was doing some jazz vocals and it was heavily distorted, it'd sound
little Sans amp.
Yeah, a little bit of run it through an 8-inch speaker. The megaphone thing.
Little parallel, just inch that fader up.
Yeah, let me give it a lot of really aggressive slap echo. Yeah, that wouldn't work. I like hearing new things, but I don't always like the new things that I hear, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I appreciate that I'm hearing new things, and I'm like, well, that's cool. But I feel like noise music is kind of something that I appreciate on like
engineering
on like a surface level.
Yeah, engineering level.
Yeah, it's like, this is a new sound that I haven't heard before, but it's not really a sound that I want to hear again.
Right.
And that's kind of a fine line that is kind of hard to bridge sometimes. And I'm trying to think of what was the last record that I really listened to a lot. I guess it would probably be probably Snarky Puppy.
Okay.
Like, We Like It Here.
I saw them a while back.
Yeah,
a
I've
few
seen them
years
a couple
ago.
of times.
Yeah.
They're always really good live, but their records are kind of a totally different animal. And even each record is different from each other, because some of them are live and some of them are more studio production where you do the drums and rhythm tracks separately from your solos or whatever. But We Like It Here is all live, and it's just a phenomenal performance that's captured really, really well. And it's, I don't know, I guess I need fireworks. I need everybody to play better than I can play in order for me to listen to it a lot, repeatedly. I don't know, maybe I'm looking in the wrong places. I've been playing with a percussionist lately, and rattled off about a dozen names that I'd never heard before, so I'll probably start there. But that album sounds great, and everybody's playing really well. And those are two of the ingredients. And just the fact that I can hear everything, which is hard to do in a mix.
Yeah, oh yeah, man.
I think it's actually quite a bit easier if you have a console. Because I think the voltages, the actual physical being of the thing allows you to work things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of records made in this century on computers like this kind of have a pinched quality to them that I've been hopefully trying to avoid. But it's always kind of there in a way. And, I mean, that's why people use summing amps, right? Because you can break it out of all of these converters making individual voltages and then bring that to a bigger voltage and then kind of shape it from there. And it allows the electricity to do things differently, I think.
Yeah.
That was my experience with using the SSLs at Berkeley, for sure. Just that I call it voodoo magic. I don't really know what it's doing, but I know it's doing something.
It's doing something.
It sounds really good. And that's, I mean, if it sounds good, it is good. That's one of Ianisms.
Yes, for sure. For sure. One of the things for me personally is I heard Prince say it in an interview one time. And I was like, that's exactly how I perceive it as well, which is kind of cool. But when you're listening to something and you don't want to change it, that's for me. Oh yeah, that does make sense. That to me is like a great record. It's like, I wouldn't have changed a damn note. I wouldn't have changed a damn thing about it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is about that quality, but maybe it's just the producer's mind or the never-ending creative mind. But that's, for me, that's kind of where it flows in that sense of, what stands out.
Yeah. Well, out of curiosity, what was the last record that you wanted to listen to 1,000 times?
Recently, I got to think about that. It's tough because it's the same thing. It's like we're just constantly working, and it's the only time I'm listening to stuff is like at the gym now. That's about it.
Yeah, I don't even really listen to stuff in the car anymore. Which
I
guess
listen to podcasts a lot.
It's really just a bad habit. I kind of got out of the habit of listening to Spotify in the car. I think it's because I started using Spotify for my lessons. Mm-hmm. And, you're listening to a bunch of AC/DC and CCR. And, I love both of those bands, but that's all it starts to recommend to you at a certain point.
Right.
It's like, I want to hear some weird stuff. And you have to kind of go out and find it.
I'm trying to think. Now I'm getting thrown on the spot. It's tough, man.
I gotta throw you one.
Yeah, no, it's good. I gotta think about that.
I think the third quality. So it's got to sound good. It's got to be played well, and of course these are both relative, and it's got to have some sort of emotional quality to it.
Yeah.
And that's my main thing when I'm producing for other people, as much as I can. Is to try to get people to emote with, connect with the material that they're playing. Because otherwise they're just playing notes.
I'll say this.
And that can be hard sometimes.
This is gonna throw you for a loop, coming from me. But actually, recently, Post Malone.
Okay. Now, what is it about Post Malone that grabs you?
I'm gonna try and
because the production is impeccable on it.
I'm gonna try and put that into words. So basically, when I heard there were a couple things that grabbed me just from an artist standpoint. They had him on Norm's guitars. Is that the
Norm's Rare Guitars?
Norm's Rare Guitars, yeah.
Place out in L.A.
And I was like, oh wow, cool. He plays guitar. And he's actually pretty good.
Nice. Good.
And
I didn't know that.
yeah, and I heard him sing without auto-tune. I was like, oh wow, cool. Like he can sing. Like he's on pitch, got a cool voice, got a cool thing happening. He's doing like Nirvana covers, Metallica covers. I was like, damn, man.
Nice.
So that was the first thing. He kind of like passed that checkpoint, and then I was like, all right, let me get into this a little. Let me see what this whole thing is about. And I heard his first, I think it was like White Inversion I don't know if that's somebody's gonna heckle me online for getting that wrong, but the first release that he did, and then there's I have to Google it, but there's a quality in his vocal that is very auto-tuned, but it's still real, and it's like, yeah, we're auto-tuning the hell out of it, but it's still emotional.
Yeah.
And I haven't really heard that before.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've experienced...
What do you think? I mean...
I don't think you can auto-tune emotion out of a vocal.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Okay.
I actually don't think that's possible, but it has to be there first.
Interesting.
You can take a lot of the inflections out, but the way that the words are presented...
Better now.
Better now. Is that an album or a song?
That's the single.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, damn, man. So that would be kind of, and coming from me, that's like, you know, because I've been very, very old-fashioned, very classicism, and I'm actually trying to expand more of my listening into today's world. My mixes are loud because I know how to do it. Your mixes are loud because you know how to do it. But
well, I actually try to mix fairly quiet, but I just like compression.
Okay. I've been using a lot of saturation and a lot of I invested in some analog, and it's just totally changed, like kind of like what you said, where that voodoo aspect, there's something that's going on when you run it through a real LA two-way instead of the plug-in, or a warm audio Pultec or whatever. I mean,
right,
it's just strange.
Well, what'd you get?
Believe it or not, a Behringer LA two-way, and I love it.
Behringer they're making a
Clark Technica or whatever
right.
it is.
Yeah, the Clark Technic, right. They got bought by,
Yep. And then the warm audio Pultecs.
Nice.
I have a PreSonus old 8-input.
MP80 or
that's
whatever.
It. And it's got the Jensen mods.
Nice. Yeah.
That I just picked up from Steve Bass. Like, and I don't even know where Steve Bass hasn't called me back in months. I gotta, Steve, where are you? Like, seriously, man, like, did you fall off the face of the planet? Like, call me back, dude. Miss that guy.
Did you replace those Focusrites you had with those PreSonus, or?
Yes.
How do they compare? Because I've kind of been eyeing those old, like, first generation PreSonus things.
Dude, it's a summing box.
Really?
It is a summing box.
That's cool.
Left and right, you can't go individually, but let me tell you, man, it is strange because when I patch that thing in, things just go from here to here. Nice. And it's and you're not losing fidelity. I mean, it's rounding.
Yeah.
It's bringing that low end a little bit more up. It's tucking things, and it's like it is doing something. Yeah, it's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, I've been thinking about getting or building a passive summing box. Because I've got mic pre's, and I've got the JDI duplex.
Yeah.
You can actually run line levels into it and then get mic level out, so then you can run that through some mic pre's.
Oh, that's cool.
And drive the mic pre's that way.
Oh, okay. So from like a DI standpoint too.
It's reamping, but it's analog saturation like anything else.
Do you do a lot of reamping?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Well, I have the reamp box, so I have the ability to do it. But
okay.
I try to get the sound in the room first.
Yeah.
And sometime today, actually, I'm getting one of those Lila, the German guys who talk with the very pinched vowel sounds.
Right.
It's like the best ABY box that I could find, but it's got a phase invert and a transformer like decoupling thing, because I I mean, I have, sorry, buddy. I have 2 amps and I like to run them both at the same time, but the Mark IV has a tendency to be out of phase with everything else that's ever been made. So that's kind of problematic, but that'll help. And,
you just switch it in the box, or
yeah, or well, you can add a gain stage, and
just push the.
Every time you add a gain stage, it inverts the polarity of the signal.
Is that because of the XLR cable, or is it just because XLR is a?
It has nothing to do with the cable. It has something to do with like the amplifier stage itself.
Got it.
And like it doesn't matter, as far as I can tell, whether it's tube or solid state or whatever. If you have one gain stage,
it'll actually change the waveform, but before it prints.
Yeah, or in the case of the guitar amps, it'll just fire the speaker backwards.
Oh, interesting.
And I've noticed that because the Mesa Boogie Mark IV has like
that's a great sounding amp, man.
I've had that amp for like 11 or 12 years.
I had that bitch cranked when we were jamming here last year.
I love that amp.
That Telecaster,
yeah.
Dude, that thing was nasty.
That's a cheap, crappy telly too, but it sounds great because it's a telly.
Plays amazing.
Well,
I don't know what the hell you did to it.
I'm sorry. But it's got like 1,000 switches on the amp, so you can add like a gain stage.
Right.
Which throws it in phase with the other thing, but sometimes that's not the sound that you want, so I just want to...
I see Merritt's Plexi is gone.
Yeah. Thank you, Merritt Partridge, for letting me borrow your Marshall.
We got to get Merritt on, man.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him in a few years.
Good luck, man. Last time I tried to talk to him, he like had to go get some water. But yeah, he's got some stories.
Oh, for sure.
And he's got great stories, man.
Merritt was my teacher from 98 to 08. And it was like...
Yeah, you've been playing drums longer than I have.
It doesn't mean a thing, man.
Well, it means you've been playing them longer.
There's stuff you can do that's just like...
I mean, one of my biggest influences, bear in mind I'm a drummer, is Devin Townsend.
Mm-hmm.
Just because he's crazy. And I love crazy musicians because they come out with, that unique stuff. I feel like at a certain point, the notes have been played before.
Oh, yes.
And you just have to go crazy. You have to figure out some weird thing to do that sets you apart from everybody else who's playing the same notes.
And dare I say, same thing with engineering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because...
And like engineering is kind of still stuck in the 80s in a large way. Well, really when you think about it, maybe, 80s...
From a sampling standpoint or more of sound?
From a technical capturing standpoint, because once you start sampling, I kind of consider that to be music creation rather than engineering.
Right.
You know what I mean? But these mics are from the 80s or the 90s. My 421s are from the 80s or the 70s.
So you would say mixing is the difference between mixing and engineering, because...
Well, I'm just saying that on a fundamental standpoint, nothing technically has really changed all that much when you're blending sounds. And a lot of people still use a lot of the same tools.
Right.
So, I don't know.
What do you think?
What do you do to get past?
Well, what do you think is next?
That's the question, right? I guess oral implants. the Dolby... Dolby Inmos.
We're gonna.
It's 19.5.
We're gonna start miking up veins and arteries and.
Yeah, well, the ASMR is kind of a cool thing. I don't really understand it because I don't listen to anything on headphones. I don't know. I feel like I'm closed off enough from the world that I can be closed off without headphones.
Right.
So I don't listen to a whole lot of that stuff. But there's a lot of cool potential like that. The sort of ultra-realism. But, fact of the matter is people are still listening the same way that we've listened to music for the most part for 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2 speakers, maybe a subwoofer, maybe you have a surround sound thing, but that's so specialized, and I don't have a surround sound system. I really don't know too many people who do, so... I think if you're going to do something new with at least music engineering, you'd have to change the way that people experience it, you know? And that's just expensive for the end user. You know, everybody has to get a new thing in order to experience this new thing, you know? If you don't have the new thing, you can't do anything.
Can't experience it. Yeah.
Right. So, I don't know. I feel like we're about due for something like that, but I'm not sure what's coming down the pipeline next. And if it's an implant, I'm not okay with that.
Well, it's nice to see that real is still relevant. I mean, clearly with
yeah. Well,
with
I think it's
what you guys are doing as a 4-piece.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's also kind of I've had that thought too, and it's I don't think that actual loud music is going to go away anytime soon. It could potentially in 100 or 1,000 years or something, where the world is just so cluttered with people that nobody has any space to be loud anymore, which is terrifying. But I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon. There's too much free space in this here country. But for now, we can still be loud, and it's funny to think that the electric guitar as we know it is really only.
What do you think? 70 years old.
70 years old, yeah. Like what? When did Charlie Christian?
Well, Les Paul too, right?
Yeah.
What was that? The 40s?
Well,
50s?
yeah, he came
30s?
up in the 40s, 30s and 40s.
And what
I
a
guess.
player! I mean, damn.
Right.
But
the solid body guitar came out in 1951 with the Fender Broadcaster. So that next year, that's 70 years. And then you go back before that, and everything was acoustic. Because at a certain point, I think we'll have to break ourselves of the reliance to electricity at a certain point and just completely go back to acoustic instruments.
Interesting.
Because, that's where the roots of human music comes from. We didn't have electricity until the late 1800s.
Right.
So I feel like if all of music becomes produced in an electronic form, we kind of lose a little bit of the humanity of it.
Oh, for sure.
So I don't think acoustic music will ever completely go away. Just because it's part of human nature at this point.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
And that's one of the qualities I look for in a record is a humanity to it. And that's what I like about, what I do here. I don't try to add too much of, my own thing to it. I like reverb and delay and compression and stuff, but that doesn't change the fact that it is a person playing an instrument for the most part.
I've been really into the dry stuff lately, personally.
Yeah. I do dry stuff for my own stuff for the most part.
Yeah.
I grew up with, on the heavier side of things, and when you use a lot of gain, you can only get away with so much delay. I don't think you can get away with any reverb with high gain stuff unless it's a mix tool, and even then I don't really like it that much. But just to glue things together, a little bit of delay goes a long way. Steven Wilson's probably my number one influence on engineering on the whole, just because Porcupine Tree were my favorite band for 5 years or so, and he always made. Well, I'm talking like he's dead here. He's still alive. He always makes great sounding records that always have everything in their own place. The drums might be a little bit smallish sounding, but it allows everything else to sound bigger. And there's a lot of value in an approach like that. Because you're always going to hear the drums.
I have a hard time with that approach. But that's just me.
and this is just a tiny bit. I'm really only talking about my favorite sounding album of all time is probably The Raven That Refused to Sing and Other Stories, which is 15 words. But that album it's produced by Steven Wilson, mixed by Steven Wilson, and it's his record, so it's his material. But it was recorded by Alan Parsons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, who did Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of has that similar quality. And like, go back and listen to Dark Side of the Moon. The drums are about this big, but they have. It's because they're a very short sound. It's not because they're missing any quality. It's just that they themselves, as an instrument, don't take up all that much space because there's not that many notes.
Maybe the arrangement aspect too, right? Because his drumming was very minimalistic.
On that record, at least, yeah.
On that one, yeah.
Nick Mason had. I'm always surprised to go back on some of the earlier stuff and hear him, like breaking out like tom rolls and stuff. I'm like, this isn't the Nick Mason that I'm used to. Like playing with the butt ends of his sticks.
Well, to me, it sounds like the noise floor on the drum, at least the drumming bus or whatever processing they did back then, which probably wasn't much. It was just more saturation than anything.
Yeah, probably.
They I know what you mean. I know what you mean by they are smaller.
Yeah.
But it's like they're still there, you know.
Right, and they're still punching in the right spots.
Yes.
But it's like but the Raven, it's got Marco Miniman on it, and Marco Miniman's one of my favorite drummers, has almost a tendency to play too many notes sometimes. I mean, I love it. But, you know, you compare the Raven to the Dark Side of the Moon, and the drumming is so wildly different, but somehow the records still kind of have a similar atmosphere to them.
Right.
You know, it's kind of beyond space, or I don't know, within space, depending on your definition of atmosphere, literal or otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's not a ton of reverb, and I know Steven Wilson likes to use delay more than reverb, just in general.
Delay on drums, or just
no,
delay in
not on
general?
drums. The drums are actually really dry. There's some, reverb for an effect on some things. But everything else has like a little bit of reverb and delay to sort of glue it all together.
I actually thinking about that, I think I use way more delay than I use reverb.
Yeah.
And it's only, it's like either slap and it's very tucked.
Right.
Or it's like tape and it's very, very tucked.
Right.
Or it's rolled off and it's very tucked. Like it's just something. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of success in it with guitars and even high gain guitars. It just kind of gives it a little space.
Yeah. You just got to be really careful. And with solos and stuff, you can do whatever the hell you want. Go crazy with delay. But for rhythm tracks, I tend to go dry, for the most part. But I'll
definitely track it dry, and then I'll just do like a bus or something just to see what it. Yeah,
it's always kind of funny getting guitarists in who, play a certain way. They always say the same thing. It's like, but it's like this is what I like, and I'm like, but this is not what will necessarily make you sound the best out of these speakers. I've tried a couple of different ways, to give them some delay, and none of them have worked.
The translation process.
Yeah, it's like, I would rather add the delay later, because then you inevitably find that it's not lined up in time, or you don't have enough, or you have too much feedback on the delay, so
it's just too much.
Too much or not enough. But the other day I had a band called Noah Cross in here, and their guitarist is doing like some tapping on a Telecaster, and we were using both of my amps in stereo. That's what caused me to get that Lila box. Mm-hmm. And we tracked with a carbon copy on one side and my MXR Echoplex on the other side after the split in his chorus. So we were able to dial in like an eighth note and a dotted eighth note on the two amps, which is what I usually do
in real time. Yeah, that's cool.
And you can kind of colorize them a little differently.
Did you have a room mic back here or something?
Yeah, I have a room mic. Where is it?
Oh,
it's right there.
There you go.
Yeah, it's kind of hidden.
Cool.
Yeah.
Tell you, man.
I probably won't use it at all.
Yeah.
Because I've got 4 mics already.
It's so hard for me because sometimes, I mean, and I used to use rooms a lot on guitars.
Yeah.
Recently I've kind of stopped. I always track with it and then just kind of
I
just
do
see what
too.
happens.
Like just in case
Just
I
in
love
case,
it,
man.
and I rarely ever do.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I've been doing that. Yeah, I mean, I always track with it.
I like it on solos sometimes.
Solos, and you can do some cool stuff with it.
Yeah.
You can like saturate the crap out of it.
Oh, yeah.
And it turns into this weird thing. It's like, what reverb is that? Oh, that's a that's a $40 Radio Shack microphone
That's your
on
room.
the floor.
That's your room getting bombed.
Yeah, that's the sound of hearing damage.
Yeah. But let's get into Maj Deeka real quick.
Yeah, man.
Talk about what you guys are doing. I'm seeing some collaborations. I'm seeing some regional touring.
Yeah, we're doing a decent amount of like weekend warrior type stuff down to. We've got a gig. Well, I guess it depends on how quickly you get this out, but today is Wednesday, the 12th
of February.
Yeah, and next Friday, which would be the 19th, is that right? Something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Well, if it's Friday,
No,
what's today? Wednesday?
No, it's the 21st.
It's the 20th,
I don't
yeah.
know how many days are in a week. On the 21st, we're going down to Charleston. Then we've got some shows in Boone and Charlotte and stuff like that. We're working on getting another local date. It's kind of like herding cats sometimes.
With everybody's schedules or just...
Yeah, and sometimes, something doesn't pan out or,
Right.
you have to ask a couple of times, whatever. So we're working on that. And MajDeeka.com. We'll have our dates on it eventually.
all the social media out
Yeah,
there, too.
we try to post on Facebook fairly often.
We'll get you guys on the description box.
Yeah. But we're working on some new tunes. And, I mean, I would love to do some actual, week or two long tours in summer.
Little legs, yeah.
Yeah, like actually go distances, go out to Nashville or wherever. I like traveling.
Me too.
I like seeing new places. Although, I guess I
get
used
bored
to,
easily.
I'm used to traveling by myself, I guess. But any excuse to go see some friends and places I haven't visited in a long time is a good enough reason for me to go do it.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing more of that stuff, hopefully.
Future plans for you guys. And you, personally.
Me? I don't know. Hopefully not completely lose it in traffic, because it's going to be in traffic. So that's goal number 1. But we're working on some new Maj Deeka tunes. I'm trying to do some more writing. I mean, I have all these tools, and I need to use them. Part of the
I think
reason
you're using them, man.
Well,
there's only 24 hours in the day.
I mean, I'm using them by proxy of somebody else playing them on their album.
I got you.
So I mean, like me sit down.
You want to try something solo
write
or
some stuff? Yeah, just write some stuff and see what comes out.
Right.
I have grievances to air, mostly about traffic. But I mean, I've got that Les Paul as a studio tool, and part of my justification to myself was that I'm going to use this to write some music. And I've got my roommate's piano, which got tuned, so that sounds good.
Cool,
the drums
man.
sound great, and
I like is that a B3?
it's an M3.
M3.
Yeah.
Okay. You got a Leslie in here? Or?
No, I don't. Leslie's are a lot more expensive than M3s. Because to get a 122, I think the cheapest one I've ever seen was $1,800.
Okay.
And that is an entire set of Yamahas.
Right.
Not that I need more. It's just I spent my money on that already.
Well, if you take that and just run it through the Marshall.
I mean, it sounds
you're
good.
John Lord.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, he played through a Marshall and a Leslie. He might have run a Marshall head into a
John
passive
Lord
Leslie.
was a lord. I mean,
He
let's
was,
just,
man. That mustache was godly.
God!
You could just grab onto it, man. That's a handlebar if I've ever seen one. But yeah, that's got more or less the same innards as a B3.
Yeah.
It needs some modifications to actually produce sound the same way. But yeah, I'm constantly looking out for that, hoping that someday I'll find some church that wants to put some good karma out into the world. And,
You see it once in a while.
Anybody who wants this B3 and this Leslie, come pick it up. And I'll just leave work immediately and just go get it. Go rent a U-Haul.
Watch it be in California.
Right. I mean, I'll drive to California. I've driven to Colorado already.
It'll cost you more money driving out there and coming back.
Yeah, but I'll come back with a wealth of stories, I ate a 14-pound steak in Texas.
So I've got this fun little thing at the end called the shootout, or the whatever you want to call it, but it's just basically a bunch of quick questions and you kind of popcorn answer.
Uh-oh.
And they're all audio related because you are
Let's go.
an audio guy. So electric guitar.
What's the question exactly?
The question is, whatever comes to mind, you just blare it out.
I mean, Les Paul's Strats 335s and Tellys.
Good company.
Yeah. Well, I need a 335 someday.
Vocal mic.
U47.
Can't complain with that.
Mm-hmm. It's U47 or C12, but if I had to pick one, it'd be a U47.
You and I both.
Yeah.
With the third being SM7, which is the one that I use.
Can get you out of a lot of trouble.
Use basically all the time. Yeah. Bass.
Rickenbacker.
Woohoo! Yeah. Yeah.
That's the next instrument.
We just bonded on a whole other level here.
That's next.
Yeah.
There's a guy on Craigslist selling one that's in a brown sunburst that I've never seen
You gotta
before.
play with a pick.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. But the beauty of a Rickenbacker is you can play it however you want. I mean, of course, Chris Squire played with a pick and Paul McCartney played with a pick.
Another Deep Purple reference.
Roger Glover,
Roger Glover
played with
man.
pick.
God.
But Geddy Lee played with his fingers.
Oh, you got me.
And
he did play a Rickenbacker. Yeah.
And he played.
I always associated him with the. That was the earlier days,
with the
right?
jazz bass.
The jazz bass was later on.
Yeah, but my favorite Rush bass tones are always the Rickenbacker.
Yeah. Did he play a Rick on Hemispheres?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
The jazz bass started to make an appearance in Permanent Waves, I think. I know that most of Moving Pictures is a jazz bass, so Limelight is a jazz bass.
Was he mostly doing Sands and a Ampeg?
Man, I really don't even know what they used for Moving Pictures.
Okay.
I know for a long time he used Sun 2000S heads with 215s.
Okay.
And I don't know if he was doing the Rico Sounds thing where you had an amp for each pickup, but the Layla box that I'm getting will split that out as an added bonus.
That's cool.
But then he switched to this whole complicated rack system, with special power amps and preamps and a Fender Twin for his double neck with the 12 string. So there's all sorts of crazy stuff going on there. Who knows what it is in the studio? For all I know, he could have been playing through licensed high watts. But I love the sound. Maybe Geddy Lee will see this and pipe in and tell us what he used.
Let us know.
Geddy, why don't you tell us what
your
your
bass
amp
Come on the Jason Damico
is?
show. Let me get a couple more credits and I'm going to come after you. Room mics.
I don't know. Anything, honestly.
That's kind of what Ian said, and that's what I said. I was
I usually filter them out so much that it doesn't really matter. Brendan O'Brien uses 57s.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had a Berkeley buddy who worked at Henson.
Wow.
And I guess that's where he is now after Southern Tracks.
What did he do? Just point him at the...
I think it's XY pointed at the drum kit, sort of
XY,
just out
okay.
in the room.
Okay.
57s.
I want to try that.
But I mean, it's through an SSL, which is going to give it some magic.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, here I have an old Omni Gefell. I've used the ribbons. Love the ribbons. I've used these 414s. It makes as much as no difference, honestly, as long as they're there.
Kick.
Well, here's the problem. Each kick mic does something else differently.
Yep.
Like, I love the D12. If I could pick one, it would probably be a D12E.
Yep.
But I find myself reaching for the RE20 more because it's more malleable of a sound.
Yeah, interesting.
And it's usually...
It's definitely more neutral.
It is.
Yeah.
It has a tendency to be a little bit sibilant on voices, I find. Compared to like an SM7.
Yeah. I prefer the SM7 over the
Yeah.
RE20. RE20, though, has a little bit more of that crunch to it.
It does. It's a little crispier, which
Yeah.
is kind of nice
Which
for
is kinda cool.
certain things,
Yeah.
not everything.
It's more of a relic
But
type
that's
of...
kind of flattering on a kick drum.
Yeah.
Where
yeah.
that little bit of sizzle is like right where the attack is anyway.
Yeah.
And then you can just scoop out some low mids, and then you have a
There you go.
great, tight, punchy kick drum sound. And I have my Stam Audio U47 FET clone on the front, which sounds great, but I think it's distorting a little bit. So I need to figure out what that's all about.
Tube.
No,
Oh,
it's a FET. Yeah, I
State?
think. Yeah,
Solid state?
solid state,
Wow.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a FET instead of a tube.
I got you.
I think I need a pad between the capsule and the FET.
Knock off 20 or something on it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
15 or whatever the Mojave has. Do the same sort of thing.
Snare.
Man, I've come around full circle at SM57.
You and I both, man.
Yeah.
Acoustic guitar.
That's usually the MA300, the Mojave.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the closest thing I have to a U47.
I like AKGs on them, too.
Yeah, and I've used ribbons and I've used the Gefels, and they all sound great. But, I mean, have you seen my Martin?
No.
I've got a D28 Marquis,
Oh, cool.
which is the sound that I hear in my head.
Right.
when I think of an acoustic guitar. It's a big Martin.
Are you more on the 12th fret, or are you playing around? Because I'm weird with acoustics. I have to like change mic placements on stuff.
Well, if I'm using the Mojave, I get really good results at about the 15th fret.
Okay.
So you get a little more of the sound hole, but it's not in the direct path. And sometimes I'll point it one way or another. Point it, have the mic physically at the 12th fret and point it more towards the body of the guitar.
I've done stuff where it's literally at the body, back behind the hand.
I've done that too.
And it's cool.
And it's cool, but I kind of miss some of the stringiness.
Well, I do it when I layer. So I'll have like...
Well, that's what I'm usually doing too.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for more of the top end.
And then there's
But I guess it depends
there's some
on what you
weird
want.
muddy things that happen that you need to clean up. If it's like the
that was
main,
my issue with that.
If it's the main stereo or mono sound from the acoustic bus, it's too much.
Yeah.
But if it's tucked in like -6 or -10 with the other ones, it kind of adds this little girth to it.
If I'm doing more of a solo acoustic thing, then I'll do like a 12th fret and then pass the sound hole.
Yeah, and it's kind of blended taste.
Yeah.
Synth.
DI. Or run it through the Mark IV.
Piano.
Or the blue Trainwreck clone.
Oh, yeah.
Because then you can drive the synth.
Yeah.
That works really well for electric piano, Rhodes,
sound really
early
good.
stuff too. Piano. I mean, I'm currently using these 414s for the piano, just because they're more or less neutral, and I can EQ it as I need to. That piano has a tendency to record really boomy, so
Okay.
I probably need to pull it away from the wall. But whatever, it's there, out of the way.
Organ.
Well, considering it's coming out of a 12-inch speaker, I usually just stick a 57 on it.
Yeah.
It's a tube amp, Really, I want to chop it and then convert the tube amp out of that organ into a head.
That'd be cool. Be retro.
Yeah.
Real retro.
Well, that's what analog outfitters do.
Yeah.
And like they'll take out the vibrato unit from the organ, and because it's like a physical spinning optical device that gives you the vibrato. I don't really completely understand how it works, but you can change the speed, and it's the most incredible sounding vibrato I've ever heard. Now, unfortunately, that means you have to like completely ruin the organ. So I won't do that, but their amps sound great. They've got these big old transformers and these cool old tubes, and the speakers, full range instead of, voiced for guitar or whatever.
Right.
So that all sounds really good. And probably sound pretty good on guitar too. Or, harmonica or something like that.
Yeah. Overheads.
Currently are the R84s.
Yeah.
The ribbons. But I kind of switch between the 414s and KM184s. If I had my druthers, those R84s would be Coles, and I would also have some Sankins right next to them. Because they did that a couple of times at Berkeley, and I don't have like $94,000 for that, or however much those Sankins are. I want to say they're like $3,000 to $5,000 each. They might be even more than that, but like the 100Ks, which I don't need in here because this room doesn't sound that good.
What are the AKG pencils?
The 451s.
451s.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm a fan.
I like those too. I mean, that's pretty much
they're
what
very bright, but
yeah, that's kind of what the KM184s do too.
Yeah.
I also really like Sennheiser MKH 40s, which are actually shotgun mics.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had a few of those at Berkeley, and
I got a buddy that's got one of those. He likes it on vocal production as well.
Yeah, they're very neutral sounding mics,
Yeah.
but they're very detailed with the transients. And the Neumanns have a tendency to be a little bit too bright for me. Because with, especially
87s especially.
87s, I think
personally, I'm not crazy.
I've come to a conclusion that I don't like U87s.
I cut a record with one, and I had to do a lot of post.
They have this like 3 to 5K thing that I can never get rid of.
It's hot. It's real hot.
Yeah. People call them bright. I call them strident. Like, if you need to cut, and that's all you want, U87 will do that in spades, and there's very little that does that better.
Yeah.
But, I'm trying to blend these things together. So I like my Mojave better. Actually, I borrowed one from a buddy of mine, like a U87 AI, which is, of course, the current version. And I can't say I've ever used one of the old ones, but it was so bright that it ended up being really sibilant. And if you listen to the Maj Deeka record, that's only on Avarice, on Evan's vocal. Everything else is the MA300.
Yeah.
And the MA300 is just... It's a little bit sparklier up top, and it's a little bit beefier in the low end, and it's relatively scooped compared to a U87 in like the mid-range. But of course, a U87 sort of got a mid-hump. But it's the sound that I'm used to, and I know how to work with it. But
U47 still. It's just like...
like put a Neumann on it. It's like, well, which Neumann? Because the 47 sounds totally different from an 87.
I like the 67s a lot, too.
I've never actually used a 67.
They're dark.
Yeah.
In a cool way.
In the demos I've heard, it's not a sound that I think I would reach for. Because I found them to be a little bit murky sounding. But... who knows? Maybe actually getting my hands on one and spending my time with it would change my opinion. Really, I just want whatever vocal sound Kansas got on Left Overture, which is probably a U87.
Wow.
But it's probably an old one through what
Right.
I think they have a Neve, which helps.
Yeah.
If I had $250,000, I'd buy Sylvia Massey's Neve. 'Cause she's selling it.
Oh!
Yeah. What's it? It's like an 8068 or something like that.
R88 series, or no? Wait a minute. That's
No,
the newer
it's
series.
a 70s like 80 series Neve, and I think it's 24 or like one of those random channel counts like 28 or something like that. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
It has like 24 1073 modules in it, like not 1081s, not
1084s.
not 10 yeah,
The
nothing like not
1073s.
1064s or whatever, 1073s, like the shit. But it's $250,000 and I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, so
Yeah. So pre's.
if I had to pick one pre, it would be Neves, but a close second would be APIs. I like Transformers.
You and I both, man. You and I both. EQ.
I don't know. Each EQ kind of does a different thing.
I know. That's why we asked.
I mean, if I bought Sylvia Massey's Neve,
1073.
I think I could make do. But I mean, there are certain things, certain resonances that you can't get out with a colorful EQ like a Neve. But you also don't get the same color out of like a Massenburg EQ that you get out of a Neve. Or like out of a Pultec, you know,
Yeah,
you can
man.
get that voice of God thing out of the Pultec by sort of getting your hump in the right spot.
I'm so glad I bought my Pultecs.
Yeah, I'm getting a.
Dude, like, and it's weird because even when they're bypassed.
Well, because you're running it through a couple of tubes, right?
Of course, man.
Yeah. And as long as they're running at the proper voltages, you'll always get something cool.
Oh my god.
And that's why I have all solid state stuff, honestly, is because, you know, the tube stuff that I've had in the past has not run at the full 240 volts or whatever that it's supposed to run at. Yeah, I'd love a couple of Pultecs, you know, 2A. And I'm actually getting a Neve compressor clone.
Ooh.
Stereo, the 33609 from Stam, which will be here anywhere between March and next year. Good old Stam Audio. When you order the thing, they'll be like, yeah, we'll be done in 6 months. And then a year later, you're like, yeah, so how's it going? Yeah, we'll have it for you in March. And then March comes and goes. And, like, you get it eventually, and it sounds amazing. Like, I've got the mic pre's, too. They make an EQ version as well. That's on the list.
I've got a DBX, what is that thing called? It's like a subharmonic synth, and it's a 500 dude, it's...
Huh.
Yeah, man. If you're on Amazon, Reverb or Amazon, and you see that thing for about $100, snag it.
Okay. Because this is not 500 series. This is a 900 series rack.
Oh.
Which is strictly DBX.
Okay. Well, it's a 500 because I have it in
Yeah.
my Neve lunchbox.
Nice. Yeah.
And it's
That'll be next after the compressor comes in.
yeah,
for sure.
It's a nice little 100-hour toy to just throw shit through and have a fun time with.
Yeah, I've actually noticed that since I got the RME and the D12 and the RE20 and the 47 FET and the Ready for the bass, which shout out to A Designs, that Ready is incredible. I don't need to add bass on anything.
Cool.
You know, it's already there and it's clean and it's present and it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, the step up in conversion was a big deal.
Well, the one thing that I hear in your mixes that's always there is that it's clean. It's a very clean mix.
Yeah. That comes from the Steven Wilson thing.
Yeah.
Everything in its right place.
Yeah.
You know, as much as I can manage at least.
Yeah. Well, you said compression, so compression.
I mean, if I had to pick one compressor,
you know.
If I could only get one compressor, well, is it one variety or do I only get to use one box
Well, all right. So we'll give you. All right, we're going to make an exception
What
here.
are the criteria here?
We're going to give you an exception. Let's say.
Could I just choose
let's
like
say 2 to 3. You have 2 to 3.
All right.
And they've the desert island thing.
2 or 3. I mean, it's
3. We'll give you 3.
all right. It's gotta. Gotta be a 2A.
Absolutely.
I think it would have to be the Neve style. You know,
Okay.
either the 2254 or the 33609, which, as far as I can tell, are the same thing, which are a diode bridging compressor, whatever that means. I'm not an electrician, so at least not yet. Or can I cheat and say like each of the channels on an SSL 4000 G Plus?
I mean, they're incredible.
And-
I use
and
them,
they're-
and the plugins are
They're
damn good
DBX
too.
style.
Yeah, man.
They're
me
the
tell you.
same VCA compressors.
The SSL channel strip compressors and also the bus compressor
The bus compressor is incredible.
is
But honestly, I've been using the Neve compressor on my mixes lately, and I like how punchy it is.
so one thing that I was surprised you didn't say. Fairchild.
Fairchild's cool, but I've never gotten my hands on a real one because they like barely exist in the world.
Right.
And I mean, I've thought about going into massive amounts of debt and pre-ordering one of the Stam clones because they make us like a 670 for about 4,000, which, considering a real Fairchild is like 30, is
Jesus.
practically nothing.
Right. Practically.
Yeah, but it's still $4,000.
Right.
It's like I can't afford that. That doesn't make
the
any sense.
justifications we do
Yeah.
for gear, man, it's
Right.
dangerous.
And like I get the impression that a real Fairchild does a different thing than any piece of software could ever
Oh yeah.
possibly do. So I'm not familiar with it.
Dude,
it's not
I've
a tool that I'm used to working with.
I've seen it with a $400 LA2A compared to the LA2A
Like-
plugins that I have.
Yeah.
It's just like, what in the world? It's
Something about
something about it, man.
I think once you take it out of the computer and into the real world does things unpredictably and sometimes wrong, and that sounds good.
That's the show right there. I mean, that's like
yeah.
it. That's like that 10-second clip.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's humanity.
Console. Now I'm really interested to see what you say with this.
I would pick an 80s SSL. Either
Okay.
a 4000,
Okay.
either an E or a G or a G plus or whatever. I think the only difference is in like the main like automation computer and a little bit in the EQs and the buses. People say that the E series EQ sounds better. I've only ever gotten my hands on the Gs and AG and AG plus, and also a duality. The workflow on the duality was better, but
Those are more recent, right?
Yeah, those are. I think they came out with those 15 or 20 years ago. That's the super analog console.
Craig Brandwin used to use
Yeah.
those at Living Arts College.
Yeah.
I remember tracking on some stuff with those.
And those consoles sound great, but they're like kind of super clean compared to the 4000s, which
right.
you can drive.
Right.
And that's what I love about that. Just drive it, like peg the meters.
Yeah.
If it sounds good, it is good.
That's
and
it.
if you get some drive out of it, like that's cool. And the 4000s just distort in a way that I like better. And that's what Brendan O'Brien mixes on. He's got I think a G plus. But it's an SSL 4000, and he took that console with him to LA. So that's a big part.
Was
of
that
it.
recent or
That was about 10 years ago, I think.
okay? Because all the ones.
It was like
so
2008.
and here's why I asked this question because I was curious. So Ian's API, like,
That API.
and that
sounds
API
so good,
is.
too.
And by the way, for those of you that don't know, Ryan and I were interning at Manifold
Yeah.
at the same time. So
Were we? Yeah, because
Yeah.
I mean, I know we did that.
Wait, was it just that one?
I think. Well, I know that
We ran into each other more than once.
We worked a show, and that was after I left.
Carl Palmer, right?
Was it Carl Palmer or was it Wayne Krantz or was it both?
It was. I wasn't there for Wayne, so it had to have been Carl Palmer.
I guess it would have been then.
Yeah.
That was a cool show.
It was crazy, man.
Yeah.
But I ran into you a couple more times before that. Because
Yeah,
I remember,
guess that's true. Yeah.
Did you have the Jeep at that time?
No, I've always driven the Scion, the Toaster.
Okay. The other guy may have had the Jeep then.
Yeah.
But
There was another guy from whatever the college is in Wilson, who was there the same time that I was. I was there for about 6 months, and then I drove to Colorado and back, and at that point,
Right.
let Ian kind of have his leave of me. But yeah, I've been back a couple of times to do when I helped out on both of the Wayne Krantz things and the Carl Palmer thing. And I wanted to go back for the last Jeff Sipe appearance, but I had a gig in Myrtle Beach or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm long overdue to go back and just say hello. Like I see Michael just kind of out and about every once in a while. He popped up at Shikori Hills with I think he had 2 cameras around his neck.
Of course.
It was great. Like he kind of appeared out of the woods. And it's like, I know this guy.
That's funny, man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I thought I'd ask about that because...
I would not mind an API Vision console.
The APIs, man.
Yeah.
So...
We had legacy consoles, API legacies at Berkeley too, but... I liked the SSLs, the EQs are more flexible, and sometimes you really need to just dial in a narrow cue and scoop it out.
Those SSLs, man, are
and you just can't do that on
amazing.
the API EQs.
Yeah.
Those are more broad stroke musical EQs, and they sound great, but
I think I'm Neve.
I want to say that I'm Neve, but I've never used a Neve, and I don't know. I used those SSLs at Berkeley, and I don't know, maybe if I used an 88R console or RS or whatever they are now, it would change the way I think about it. I mean, if I had my druthers, I would have, 40 Neve mic pre's and EQs, and then track with those, and then mix on
SSL.
But that now we're talking about money that I will never have, so.
You may.
I mean, I can always go to LA and mix on one of their consoles.
So the last question that we always ask everybody is if you could go back in time to your 15-year-old self and tell him or her advice from your experiences and what you know now, what would you tell them?
I'd probably say start saving for a U-47.
Start saving for Sylvia Massey's Neve when she sells
like
it.
It'd be invest in Bitcoin, because then I'd be able to buy it. But I don't know. I think I would tell my younger self to never guess on anything. Because the reason I moved back to Raleigh was I was working at Guitar Center, and I guessed my manager's password, and that got me fired. So it's a whole thing, and like I understand it, but if I had kept that job, I'd still be in Boston, and I wouldn't be talking to you, and my life would just be so much better. But I mean,
That's good. That's good, man.
I don't know. It brings up the question of what happens if it's the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
What if you make one small different decision
every second, man?
That
Shift in the
affects
chair.
Everything else that happens later on.
Yeah.
But I'm not mad with being in Raleigh at all.
You're not mad talking with me?
Except no, this is definitely not. I am mad at the traffic. But
the traffic's getting crazy around here, man.
It is really actually starting to wear on me.
It's getting nuts.
Yeah. I grew up here, and I love this town.
You and I
love
both.
everybody that I know here. There are so many talented musicians in this town, and everybody's just kind of doing whatever they want, and I love that.
That's why we started the show, man.
Yeah.
Just to cover everybody, just to talk, you know.
Like, and that's if everybody's just doing what they want, then they're being true artists.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think has to happen. You know, if you have, you know, something like what I imagine LA or certain parts of Nashville to be, where you're in this sort of corporate machine and you're sort of required to adhere
Commercialized.
to a certain sound and a certain, you know, whatever.
Industry standard.
Right. You have to do a thing because it's acceptable.
Right.
And that's what sells. This town doesn't sell anything except like computer software. So the music is kind of like a tertiary concern, and it's kind of freeing in a way.
Do you prefer that?
I don't know. To be fair. I like it. I mean, a long time ago, I think I felt like I would rather be a big fish in a small pond, and I guess talking to you, at least I am a notable fish.
Oh, come on.
But I mean, with running the Jam and Emerge for I mean, I ran it for a year and a half. I did it for 2 years, and all of the sort of, you know, the ripples outward that happen from something like that. You bring a bunch of people together, they all become friends, they all play, they all improve, and then they go out into their own lives, and they sort of spread that to the people that they know that I don't, and that all sort of spreads in a nice way. And I think there's like a bit of an insulated scene in the Triangle, and yet everybody sort of knows everybody because it's so small that everybody does their thing separately from what anybody else is doing, and then everybody is able to go see that and sort of take something from it.
Well, it's funny because with Adam Pitts, like when we had him on the show last year, it was like, dude, this is the first time that we even had a conversation. Because for years, we were always doing Bike Fest or whatever. He'd be on the other side of downtown Raleigh. I'd be on the other side of downtown Raleigh.
Right.
And we would just, like, I would go check out his set for a little bit. He would go check out our set if it was at different times. It was just like, dude, we never sat down for like 2 hours. And we just, like, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So your theory is, I've experienced that here.
Yeah. And, like, I mean, there's you know, it is a little bit cliquey sometimes. And that can be kind of a
genre-wise, yeah.
Genre-wise, yeah. And, you know, people hang out with people that they're friends with.
Right.
You know, it happens with everything. So I can't, like, fault anybody for that. But it also allows, you know, people to sort of incubate a specific thing. And it's cool. 20 years ago, they said Carborough was going to be the next Seattle or something, like back in the 90s. With Superchunk and Ben Folds and, you know, folks like that.
Dave Matthews?
Well, he's from Virginia.
Didn't he have a stint in UNC? Or
I don't really know. I feel like I like Dave Matthews Band. I'm not like a Dave Matthews Band fan just because I didn't live in a fraternity in UNC. And that seems to be who listens to Dave Matthews.
Yeah, because I don't. Nothing against Dave Matthews.
Nothing against Dave Matthews or any of his band.
Carter Beauford, yeah, dude,
a phenomenal drummer,
freaking monster. Man.
He's kind of low key a big influence on me.
Low key.
Well,
he's huge, man.
He's backwards.
Limb Independence is just like.
Well, I kind of got that from him and from Danny Carey at the same time, from opposite directions.
Right.
So. But that he's always talking with the hi-hat.
Yeah.
And I love that. But I think that is finally coming to fruition, where we're starting to see Raleigh the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill sort of get recognized as a heavier hitter than had been recognized in the past. With Hopscotch becoming, you know, a festival to what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know.
Ferment.
Yeah, something. You know, to fuck with, you know. How do I say this without cussing?
You can't. Any last words, my friend? And thanks again for your time.
Of course, man. Thanks for making the drive all the way out here.
Of course.
Yeah, we got
We gotta
we got a nice shot.
We gotta do something, man.
Yeah,
we gotta
do
figure
something.
out.
Yeah, you should. I need to get that Monday night music club thing going. Have you out and
Where were you thinking? Here? Or?
Yeah, I was thinking like doing something here, getting a couple of people who aren't in bands together, and because that's. Are you familiar with Kevin Gilbert at all?
Name sounds really familiar.
Kevin Gilbert, I don't know, he was like an LA guy back in the early 90s who was like a musical prodigy. But he basically got Sheryl Crow her record deal because he was doing some producing. I think he produced or helped produce a Madonna record.
Wow.
Or something like back in like 88 or something. Made a couple of my favorite sounding records, one of which is Toy Matinee, which is what I test my systems with. It's pretty corny music, but it's a super Neve sounding record, and it's like a Neve and a two-way into a 47, two-way, or like, it might have been a Fairchild, who knows, it was LA, that's where the stuff is, into a Neve console, into tape. And it's just, it's so thick and velvety and wonderful.
Yeah.
But he had a group of friends called the Tuesday Night Music Club, which is the name of Sheryl Crow's first record. And a lot of those songs on that album were written by those guys at that Tuesday Night Music Club. And I think if you just have people hanging out writing music, you know, you can bring in some different people and come up with a variety of things, you know. I would love to get, you know, different drummers in so I can play something else.
Well, that was a great jam that we had.
Yeah. Oh, there will be more of those for sure.
That was fun, man.
Yeah. Not sure when, but I'll definitely keep you in the loop on that.
Yeah.
But,
Any last words? Ian said, don't eat the shrimp.
Don't eat the shrimp. But I like shrimp. I mean, you gotta cook them first.
I do too. Yeah, you definitely gotta cook them first.
Let's see. I don't know. I mean, he had a lot of really good words about not letting your ego get in the way, which is really hard.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I guess just whatever it is that you do, just try to be the best that you can be at it, right?
Well said.
Yeah, whatever you got.
Well, that's it.